This is the Franchise QB Podcast, where we empower entrepreneurs to win big in franchising. We huddle up weekly to educate our audience about the most successful small business model ever created, franchising.
Welcome to the Franchise QB Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Halpern, a 20-year industry veteran and entrepreneur. My mission is for listeners to achieve their American dreams of creating wealth and independence through franchise ownership. Every week, we speak with franchisees, franchisors, or vendors that support the industry. Thank you for joining us, and let's get started. Welcome to the Franchise QB Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Halpern, a 20-year franchise industry veteran and entrepreneur. Today, we have a very exciting guest joining us in the huddle, Adam Bumpus, franchise owner with That1Painter. Welcome, Adam.
Thanks, Mike. Happy to be with you.
Great. So you are my first guest on the show that is an actual franchise owner who I worked with to place in a franchise system. You've also were the first to recommend that I start a podcast. So thank you for the encouragement. So I'll tell the audience a little backstory about how you and I met. We met when you were looking at a property management franchise that you were evaluating, and it didn't happen to be available where you live in Chattanooga, Tennessee. So after our first conversation, I had then selected a handful of brands for you to evaluate. They happened to be in the drywall repair space, the residential cleaning space, and the painting space. I don't know if you remember that, but those are the brands that I had shown you. And you asked for introductions on two of them, the drywall repair and the cleaning, but not the painting, which is ironic. But the brand you invested in, That1Painter, contacted you anyway, based on my initial territory check. They clearly wanted to be in Tennessee and work with you. And the rest is history. So let's back up a bit. Before you decided to own a That1Painter franchise, what was your career? What did it look like? What was your career history?
So my first position after college was a construction kind of project management role. I did that for about a year and a half, and then I had I'd say I had a season of quickly figuring out things I didn't like to do. So those things were I was a store manager or assistant store manager at Target. I worked, trying to think, I think there's multiple positions. I might be skipping one. But then the next thing was a sales position with a company called Worldwide Express, which is a logistics sales partner of UPS. And that was very much like door-to-door sales. And then my position that I held the longest was a supply chain manager position of an e-commerce company.
Okay.
That role kind of taught me a lot about purchasing and pricing. And then in addition to that, it was my first opportunity to develop kind of long-term business relationships, which I found to be kind of my favorite niche as far as like having enjoyment, fulfillment out of my career. I ended up leaving that position and moving to Atlanta. And I worked in the automotive industry for a little bit purchasing and in sales. And during that time, I decided to get my MBA. That was actually during the pandemic.
Yeah, so let's talk about that. So why did you eventually decide to go back and earn your MBA? And how has that translated into helping you with your new business?
I'd say it's helped with the new business. The MBA process is just, learning new things really quickly and applying them. And so it definitely teaches you a lot about time management. I decided to get my MBA actually because I was in Atlanta after being in Knoxville for the first 10 years of my career. And I realized that I did not have a network in Atlanta. And I was coming from a position at a small business that wasn't easily recognizable. Now I had a fantastic job and learned a ton in that company, but the company is private by nature. And so there wasn't a lot to reference there. So my skills didn't really jump out on a resume. So I had difficulty getting interviews at the types of positions that I was interested in at the level that I wanted to enter at. And so I'd tell you that the time that I said I have to get my MBA was when I was interviewing for a job at the support center at Chick-fil-A in Atlanta. And I basically got eliminated at the final stage. Basically, I was number 4 when there was 3 candidates that got the final interviews, and all 3 of them had MBAs. And so
Now, was that to work for Chick-fil-A corporate, or was that to kind of own a location?
It was actually a Chick-fil-A corporate, and the dream of being a Chick-fil-A operator that everybody else is pursuing. I've just heard so many stories about that process, how long it takes. It's obviously a great opportunity for those the chosen few. But I'd never worked for Chick-fil-A. It wasn't something that I was interested in from a standpoint of like needing to go through that pipeline and through that process. And so that was never of interest to me. The idea to become a business owner actually came later.
Yeah, so it's interesting. You go to get the MBA to kind of lever up the resume and have it stand out amongst your peers, lesson learned from the Chick-fil-A experience. But then all of a sudden you choose entrepreneurship as your path. What kind of went off where you said, you know what, instead of trying to get a job, I'm going to go look to invest in a franchise or invest in myself and start a business? What was kind of the moment that made you make that decision?
I think honestly, it was looking at a lot of my friends and family and seeing the nature of their careers. Now, I've never valued stability as highly as a lot of other people. I've dealt with a lot of pain because of that. I should value it a little bit more. But the other piece of that was that I know that I've always been entrepreneurial. I've always enjoyed learning new things. I didn't want to be pigeonholed into any specific role. And so versus climbing a corporate ladder, becoming a business owner was the fastest route to saying, hey, there's nobody that's going to tell you what you can and cannot do in this position. And your growth and your ceiling are really up to you. And so that became clear to me as far as the path that I was interested in. Then it was just a matter of, okay, like what business? And the truth is, like, franchising to me created the clearest path to get started and get ramped up quickly.
Yeah, so you can kind of utilize that entrepreneurial spirit that you have and couple that with the guide rails that a franchise provides. So let's talk about the franchise. You chose That1Painter as the right fit for your first franchise venture. Why did you ultimately choose That1Painter as the model?
I'd say, first of all, I really appreciated the fact that they reached out. We did identify that there was 3 that we were interested in. I put That1Painter third, and you said, well, let's just start with 2. And what you told me at the time was, hey, I haven't placed anybody at this company before, but they're really attractive. It looks like a really great opportunity, and I think they're going to be an up-and-coming brand. The other 2 that we were looking at were more established, and the other piece of that was both of those they weren't very, very available. They were available in Chattanooga, but I didn't have the opportunity to purchase other territories, at the new level, like
Right.
not versus like a transfer, but truly like, hey, this is a new territory, new location. And, my wife and I, we moved to Chattanooga about 2 years ago. So this was almost like a year and a half into our time here. And it was like, well, we're going to be in Chattanooga for a while. And then we have friends and family in Nashville. And so I was interested in looking at businesses that would potentially have availability in both of those cities. And That1Painter did.
Yeah, I mean, the availability for an emerging brand is why a lot of candidates decide that's the route they want to take. And, as fast forward to today, I mean, That1Painter is the fastest growing residential painting franchise on the planet, over 100 territories or something like that in a short, 18 months. So it's a good thing you made your decision when you did, because you're able to scoop up some territory, throughout the area. So let's explain to the audience the chronology, because this is really interesting to me. When we met, you invested in that single territory in Chattanooga, and that was about a year ago, Q4 of last year. Then you partnered with a friend and invested in 2 additional That1Painter territories in the first quarter of 2023, which is not that far removed from when you initially bought that first territory. Then you partnered with another friend and invested in 3 additional territories in Nashville. So to me, it's very telling that the more you learned about That1Painter and the parent company ResiBrands, the more heavily you recruited friends and partners to invest in the model. So walk me through the conversations behind the scenes when you first went out to Austin to kind of validate the model and your meet the team discovery day to validate the concept through investing in the first territory and how it kind of unfolded from there.
Yeah, so I actually did my evaluation and chose to go with That1Painter prior to going to a discovery day.
Okay.
When I first chose to start in Chattanooga, I had a friend that we were best friends from college and have been really close ever since. And he had moved from Charlotte back to Knoxville. And Knoxville is where my family is and where a lot of my friends have been for a long time. And so I was always interested in Knoxville. And he and I, when he was living in Charlotte and I was living in Atlanta, we talked about potentially investing in something together. And so it was basically the first phone call that I made when I was considering, hey, do I want to do more than Chattanooga? And if so, do I need to, could I do that by myself? And I really didn't want to. The truth is, I was interested in, starting the Chattanooga location by myself, but I knew that, I'm not fully well-rounded. I'm good at certain things, but I think I need help with accountability, and I also wanted boots on the ground in any location that I was going to invest in early on. And so my partner, Caden, he lives in Knoxville. He's got a full-time job outside of That1Painter, and the decision there was, hey, we're not going to. Was the operator in Chattanooga, but we were going to hire operators in Knoxville. And that basically you called me and said, hey, That1Painter is actually selling a lot of units right now, or preparing to sell a lot of units right now, because the word is getting out and the brand is definitely being built well. And I believe that. I felt like when we first talked about it and when I first met the team there, that hey, these people are different. These people are going to build something that's going to be extremely successful, already has been successful wherever they launched. And I was like, I want to be a part of that. I think that there's no reason why this shouldn't be super successful in Tennessee. But, my dream just kept going because I said, hey, either I do this now and start kind of in multiple locations, or someone else is going to buy That1Painter in Nashville, in Knoxville. And I said, I don't want to buy it from them. I think that this is probably the cheapest it will ever be. That was kind of my thought.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, that's a very interesting observation, because a lot of candidates go through the same thing. They don't want to miss out on securing territory where they can grow. They also don't want to be too front loaded on investing in too much territory and not having the operational capabilities to execute. So that's a conversation I have with a lot of folks. And it sounds like you made a very good decision, knowing that, we watched this thing very quickly accelerate, and, you were able to lock in areas that you knew were going to be good for you and your partner. So I'm glad that that worked out for you. So when did you launch in Chattanooga? When did you launch in Knoxville? When did you launch in Nashville? So what did the kind of chronology look like? I know you started your business in April. What about the other markets?
Yeah, so my launch date was actually just before April started, and I believe that the Knoxville territory launched just a few weeks later. And we launched that with 2 employees. And then Nashville kind of had a soft launch because JD, our partner there, he was still working. And so he kind of did some estimates and project management on the side until we felt like we had enough kind of momentum from a marketing standpoint for him to go into it full time. I think he launched like the 1st of May technically, and then really got going full time in June, or maybe actually July. So I think that for 2 months, Nashville, we were kind of, we had just had our toe in the water. And then we picked up heavily in July. And each territory, you know, the first month it's challenging. It's definitely, none of us had any experience in painting. None of us had any experience really in home services. And so we had a lot to learn. We had a lot of confidence that we had to build. And then the other piece is just, you know, you're going to make a lot of mistakes in the beginning, and the learning the difference between, hey, this is normal, and you just got to keep taking at bats, keep taking swings, versus, hey, this feels like insurmountable, these issues, like we're not equipped to handle them. Learning the difference between that when you're, you know, if you're a business owner and you're doing something unique and you don't have, you know, other franchisees to lean on, I know that I would have had so many more moments in these last 6 months where I would have said, I shouldn't do this, I should give this up. But in the franchise system and with That1Painter, there's just a great network to lean on, and people that have been on this journey longer than we have, to tell us like, hey, there's nothing, like, this is normal. You're going to make it. You're going to do great. And I'd say I'm my own worst enemy. I'm probably the biggest. I was more hopeful than anybody in the beginning. And then when I'm in it, it's like, oh, this is tough.
Yeah. Owning a business is not easy, especially when you're new at it. And, you know, when you get trapped inside your head and you have all that head trash going around, and you start second guessing yourself, and it's nice to have the franchisor support team to lean on. It's good to have peers in your network to lean on. And in your case, you had two of your close friends in these other markets that you can kind of bounce ideas off of, learn best practices, even though you guys were all figuring a lot of it out at the same time. So I know you're still early on. I mean, a new business takes time to kind of stabilize, but how's it going so far with your business and with your other territories?
I mean, we've still got, you know, we're doing well. We haven't reached the levels that we, you know, kind of forecasted for ourselves, and that's partially because of, you know, those regressive forecasts. But at the same time, I'd say like we didn't enter into this with a substantial amount of working capital. And so we've really bootstrapped it compared to probably a lot of our peers in That1Painter even. And I wouldn't recommend that to other folks. In a way, that was kind of the decision that we made. We chose to take that risk in order to kind of lock down those territories. So
Right.
we basically kind of soaked up a lot of that working capital in acquiring territories. And so I would say that That1Painter probably wouldn't sell to someone. They wouldn't sell 6 territories to someone that was in our position moving forward. But you know, we've all kind of proven the concept that there's enough cash flow to keep the business, you know, stable enough. We haven't really had to invest any outside capital for a while, but we've launched 4 of the 6 territories. We have yet to launch this one territory in Nashville and then one territory in Knoxville.
Okay.
And for those things, we're mainly just we don't want to launch this late in the year because of the seasonality, and then we think that we can definitely launch that early next year, though.
Yeah, that was going to be one of my questions. If you can look back to when you just started the business, you know, 9, 12 months ago, what would you do differently? And it sounds like you would have made sure you had enough working capital to kind of get through the startup phase. Does that sound like anything else that kind of come to mind as you look back on when you kind of acquired the business?
Yeah, actually, something that really made it challenging for me in Chattanooga was that I actually hired someone to be an employee full time in the beginning. They started basically alongside me, and that was premature. One of the things that it did was it left a lot of blind spots for me to learn the operations, because the things that he was doing in his role, I didn't want to step on his toes, and it would have been a waste of time if I did. But I was missing out on some context that would have helped me, I think, get confidence. And the other thing is that That1Painter, did not recommend that I hire somebody. So that was also, me not working the system and not trusting the system. I thought that I could kind of compensate for that or overcome that with early sales volume, but it just became like really really challenging the first couple of months. I had to let him go, which was really really hard emotionally as well. As kind of the first time that you start a business and your first employee doesn't pan out, and it's really your fault. Like it was my fault, and I'm really grateful that the other people that we've hired have been really successful. But the thing is, like, we put them in a better position to be successful. So in a way, Chattanooga has been kind of the test kitchen for us in Tennessee. I've been basically the scout, like, hey, let me go and make the mistakes, and I'll tell you guys what I wouldn't do if I were you. And that's happened a number of times. I'd say like that piece where we started with 2 employees, that wasn't the right decision because we weren't investing and we didn't have the working capital to make that model work at the time.
Yeah, that's good that you recognize that, the systems are there for a reason, and, you got burned by making a decision, but it didn't kill you. It just hurt, and it's painful. But hopefully that lesson is going to end up making your business better in the long run, because, the whole point of having a franchise is having, tested and proven models. But sometimes you want to try something on your own, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But you can recognize that mistake was painful and emotional for your business. But, I'm glad it didn't do more damage than it could have done. So let's talk about, as you started in April and you began kind of ramping up the sales, you got through that patch with the employee. What's a good month look like in a territory for sales for where you are, and where do you want to be?
So the goal for, one of the first milestone goals for any That1Painter franchisee is to do what they call it the $1 million mark, which is basically the amount of monthly sales that it would take to reach $1 million in
So
annual.
like 80K a month, something like that?
83, I forget the exact numbers, but it's close to 83,000. I have not had my $1 million month yet, but in August I did eclipse 80.
Nice.
So that was exciting, and really, like, from starting in April to moving forward, every month was incrementally better. It was ultimately like, hey, we're closing at a higher rate, and we're building this up. Now Knoxville, with 2 employees, they hit $100,000 a month really early on, which is super exciting.
Yeah, that's really exciting. That's a big month early on.
So, it's we're gonna focus on we definitely want to build this to be $1 million at least per year per territory or per unit, and so we're going to build towards that. In Knoxville, 3 territories, that would be $3 million per year, and to do that, hopefully we can do that with 3 employees. That would be healthy from a cash flow standpoint. But it is challenging. I think there's definitely ways that we can improve to make it less difficult. For instance, the team in Austin is doubling that. Like they can have a single employee that can do $150,000 in sales and business, like, per month. And so the concept is proven. It's just that we have to grow in order to learn how to execute at that level.
Got it. Well, that's good that the roadmap is there for you. So talk a little bit about the support from HQ. I mean, when things are good and things are bad, I know they have a call center, Resi Connect. They have a creative agency, Resi Creative. Let's talk about how you've leveraged those resources to kind of build sales.
Yeah, so I mean, early on, I had a lot of phone calls with the founders, with Steven and Alan, and so they've given me and my partners a lot of their time. Alan came to visit me during the first couple months. He's actually been back to Tennessee and spent some time with us at Knoxville. The relationship with them is really great. We really feel like they're friends as well as colleagues. they've definitely encouraged us a ton. That's a thing that is unique about them, is that one, they're exceptional business people. Like, they're exceptional salespeople. They've built a really solid system. They're constantly reinvesting in that. And then the other piece is that, the team has changed a lot. There hasn't been tons of turnover with their team. They've just added a lot of really talented people, even since I, came on in January. I think that their support team is probably more than doubled in that amount of time, and they're just leveling up. There's a lot of talent there in Austin. We get weekly coaching from some of the top people in the company. We have a weekly franchisee call that's usually led by one of the members of the core team, whether it be Steven or Alan. Sean Bush is a guy that is incredible from an operations standpoint. He does a lot of the coaching and leadership. So there's no shortage of talent on their team, and there's also a lot of people. I think that when you research franchises, the support team, and you told me this, that most support teams don't match them in terms of the number or in terms of the quality.
Yeah. No, when I went down to Austin myself to kind of, visit with their team and look at their facility, I had texted you and I said, hey, who do I need to meet? And all the names you just mentioned, Sean and Jay and Steven and Deanna, all those folks I met with, and I was really impressed. Their CMO, like, everything they're doing is very tech forward. They're young, but they're experienced. It left me with a good impression. And it sounds like you've talked to their leadership, you've talked about their culture, and that's important, right? I mean, you want a franchisor that works with you, and they're not like the big bad franchisor. They're more approachable. And it sounds like, they're at a stage where they do that still, which is nice, even though they're growing so quickly.
Right.
One thing that impressed me was the technology platform. I like how you don't have to wait a month to see if you were profitable. You can look at the software and look at each job and determine what the gross profit looked like. And if your contractor says, hey, I need more paint, you can approve or kind of modify the quantity or decline based on how that particular job's going. So how have you found that software to be beneficial for your business?
It's really easy to use. We use something called House Call Pro. And so that platform is great for estimating. The team at That1Painter is constantly improving it. They're constantly investing in things like templates that we get to use. The idea that, you go to a week of training, or really 3 days of training, and then you have online training in addition to that. But once you get through, roughly 3 weeks of total training, that you're armed to the teeth with tools to be successful in a business that you knew nothing about, and that you ultimately are the newest kid in town. And, you have this brand and you have these tools that make you, you're far superior to a lot of established competitors. And part of that's one of the things that I was interested in That1Painter for, is that new companies don't have as much of that, that legacy debt from a technology standpoint. Technology is constantly improving, but a lot of times businesses will invest heavily in some infrastructure, and then they're afraid to change. And so they get stuck with some really old systems. I studied information systems in my MBA program. That was my focus. And I came from a background of e-commerce. And so I wanted a brand that thought the same way, that said, hey, we're going to use kind of like the easiest processes. We're constantly be on the lookout for things that can help make our business, more streamlined. And, there's definitely some hiccups there because we're still figuring it out, but you don't have a company that's kind of resting on their laurels. They're constantly evaluating these things, and they're constantly willing to say, hey, if we make a change, we're going to make sure it goes well, because we're going to put a ton of training behind it and make sure our franchisees aren't kind of left in the dust.
Yeah, I mean, technology in today's day and age, it moves so fast. And with a franchise system, you definitely want one that's kind of forward thinking and isn't going to just get stuck with one solution and is constantly looking. And I felt that way when I was there. They were already talking about different approaches they'd look at different segments of the business. So I like to hear that. So let's talk.
Major corporations like CarMax, and Target, and those are examples of companies that have amazing technology available, but to implement that at the local level, it's really difficult. And so most of their kind of local operators are working on really obsolete systems. And so, a franchise still has the opportunity to be just like that. They could have a ton of legacy systems, and I'm sure there's other brands that do, but That1Painter being new, that was ultimately like a sign for me that, hey, I think that they can build this, fresh and with some really great tools.
Yeah. Well, I'm really excited to hear that you and your partners are, have already achieved $80,000 a month, $100,000 a month. And, I know with That1Painter, when I was there, they talked about setting really, really hard goals so that you don't just achieve your goal and say, hey, we did it. It's like, let's shoot for the stars and do big things and do special things. So it sounds like you're adopting that approach with your business. This has been great. Anything else that you want to add to the mix before we wrap up?
I don't know. I want to say thank you. Your process to kind of show me what I needed to see as far as like brands that really fit the profile that I gave you of, hey, I'm looking for something that I don't have to have an office. I'd like to be able to start from home. And you came up with several brands, and the fact that one of them was That1Painter, and that company it's really been like family for me. I'm just really grateful. I feel lucky and fortunate, and you were the person that led me down that path. So thank you so much.
Well, Adam, you're so welcome. It's music to my ears when I hear that someone that I work with is happy with their decision. And you're the one doing all the hard work, not me, but I'm very glad that this had a good outcome. So thank you for being a guest on my show. And if anyone in the audience would like to learn more about the process to own a That1Painter franchise, contact me at franchiseqb.com or on Twitter at QBFranchiseQB. I'll get you in touch with That1Painter. Adam, thank you so much for taking the time to get in the huddle with us, and continued success with your business.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you for listening to the Franchise QB podcast, where you're at the helm of your future as a franchise owner. If you enjoyed the content, please rate the show and recommend it to anyone that might be interested in franchising. Make sure to visit franchiseqb.com to subscribe to my newsletter and for an actionable playbook to go from walk-on to legend in your new business. Follow us on Twitter at QBFranchiseQB and join us every week for a new episode. See you next time.
Visit franchiseqb.com to take the next step of your journey towards wealth, independence, and franchise ownership. And remember, when working for the man gets old, you must do something bold. Thank you for listening.